Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Rad Life, where we explore what it really means to live well, age boldly, and reinvent ourselves from the inside out. Today's episode is super special for me. Our guest is someone whose work has deeply shaped my own personal journey of transformation. And I had the good fortune to meet him in person and be part of a workshop that he basically was leading at Modern Elder Academy, MEA, in Santa Fe it's been March, I think. It's been a few months. So please welcome to the show my friend, and I really consider him a pope of wisdom, and we'll get into that and how that transpired. It was pretty funny. Jerry Colonna, author of Reboot, Leadership and the Art of Growing Up, and we're going to talk about the growing up part because that's also an interesting story, and the newly released Reunion, Leadership and the Longing to Belong. And he's working on another book, which I'll let him talk to you about maybe if he chooses to. He's also co-founder and CEO of Reboot.io and a globally respected executive coach who invites leaders to bring their whole self to the table, which is really a cool thing about Jerry. His approach I find to be very, very kind, very vulnerable, very approachable. But at the same time, he asks everybody to come to that table with a radical self-inquiry and a kind of hunger for emotional courage and deep compassion. So beyond the titles, he's a truth teller, a soul guide. He said to me before we got on the air that he's also an Olympian and a model and all that stuff. So we'll touch on that as well if he chooses to, because that's news to me. But hey, I'll go down that rabbit hole with you, Jerry.
It
And
was a joke.
I know he was joking, but but the thing about it is that's really cool is, and you say it in your book, and let's bring Jerry on because I want to look at him when I say this to him. You said in your book that you actually frustrate people, right? Because they are coming to you for answers, and what you do is you cause them to ask the questions, and
Right.
yet that's where the real work is, right?
That's
So
right.
thank you for being on the show. I really, really appreciate you. I mean, anytime I spend with you, I find this like a real fun privilege, and I really appreciate you making the time, especially when you are taking some time to yourself right now. And so let's talk about what needs to be healed. What can we lead with heart? How's your approach? Because you are known as I believe the CEO whisperer, right? So you work with a
Right.
lot of executives, but you also, I think your approach for coaching and your approach for mentorship and guidance goes beyond just the business environment. It's a lot more foundational, personal, right?
Well, first thing I would say is thank you for having me on the show, Rod. It's exciting to see this part of your life unfold and to be exposed to you in this way. I feel really connected to all the things you're trying to do. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, my friend.
So, yeah, I guess what you're asking is really a question about that whole self, isn't it?
Yep.
Maybe the best way to explain it is that we'll go back to a line that I use frequently in Reboot, which I know you know.
Yep.
And that is that I have a fundamental belief that better humans make better leaders.
Hmm.
And if we hold that to be a truth, and I can talk about why I know that to be true, then the assignment for all of us who hold some sort of leadership position is that we have to work on ourselves.
Mm.
That's the task. Our job is to become the best possible human, aka grow up as best as we can.
So funny that is, and I want to just touch on that for a minute. When I saw the program that was being offered, the reboot and the art of growing up, and I've shared this with you. I did not understand what the growing up component was. Was it growing up your business because I knew you were an executive coach? Was it growing up, whatever it is? And the truth of the matter is exactly what you described. It's actually growing up as a person, and yet we're dealing with it in sort of that midlife mucky middle, right? That
Mm.
time of the second half, the second mountain,
Mm.
so to speak. And what is it about that? Is it that we never took the time to grow up? Is it about the fact that we are now having a chance to be maybe more cognizant and intentional about this and doing it maybe for ourselves versus doing it out of a sense of responsibility? I know you have your own personal journey that you went through to go through this, right?
Mm. Well, true to form, I'm going to answer your question with a question.
With a question. Of course you are.
So you said that when you signed up for the course, when you
Yeah.
signed up for the workshop, you weren't really sure what it was about.
Nope.
And what did you think it was about?
Well, let me step back for a minute, because what motivated me to actually sign up for the workshop is I was going, and you know this, so I've shared this with you. But for those who don't know, I went through my own sort of moment of what's next, what now, when I turned 60. Ironically, it happened a little bit light at the age of 40. And at the age of 50, it didn't even blink. At the age of 50, my curiosity, my embracing of uncertainty, my saying yes to everything was almost like on speed dial. And the
Mm,
interesting thing about it was that I think it was because I looked at 50 as being a benchmark, that everything beyond that is bonus, right?
mm,
Oh, this is just bonus time now. We kind of reached the end of the race, and now this is just open runway basically. And so I said yes to everything, and career, everything was kind of in sync and harmony and humming. Ironically, I didn't see this thing coming at the age of 60, and I started feeling it a little bit earlier, but then at 60, it hit, and it hit where it was like the flavor had gone out of a lot of stuff that I've been doing for a long time. The purpose behind it was maybe a little bit more foggy, or maybe was no longer standing the same way as it was before.
mm,
For motivation, for engagement, for constant curiosity. I guess maybe I also fell into the trap of saying, okay, well, I'm now 10 years past that point of saying yes, so maybe there's no more to grow,
mm.
and using that word, and it kind of like abandoned it a little bit. It got a little foggy and mucky, and I started, I had a couple of things happen in my life, and it caused me to basically literally go, no, I'm drinking from a fire hose of knowledge now. Everything and anything I can digest and immerse myself into, I was doing, and the reading and all of that stuff that I was doing in a soul manner was fine. But again, it continued to be unsatisfying. So I started looking for things to get engaged in. And I looked at like community colleges to see if there's anything in there that would engage me. But, my choices were go to do a class on how to write a living trust, or how to basically write a will, or, macrame or crochet or something like that. And that didn't really satisfy me. That wasn't interesting enough for me. And I literally looked around, and as they say, the teacher will appear when the student is ready. Here comes this email from MEA, from Modern Elder Academy, talking about. I don't think it was even about the workshop. It was just something about them, and I was familiar with them, so I went. I clicked on the link, went there. Oh, they have workshops. I looked there. It was a week before Santa Fe,
Mm.
and I saw this thing that was in Santa Fe. Didn't really know anything about you. I knew about Chip because I was familiar with him from the hotel industry with my background on the design side. And I'm like, oh, never been to Santa Fe. I hear it's a nice place. And this is Reboot. Right word. I need a reboot. Something needs to be rebooted. The art of growing up, though, I don't know about that. I don't understand it. Oh well, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll find out in a week. And I signed up. And you and I talked about this when we had an opportunity to coordinate a call. You coordinated a call, kind of a retouch base with the cohort that we had. And I realized only on that call that that was an example of embracing uncertainty,
Mm.
being open to possibilities. I had no idea what this thing was, but I said yes to it. And it was life changing, Jerry. I mean, I will acknowledge you here as well. The cohort, the environment, the experience, your leadership, the sensitivity, the sensibility, the openness was rewarding on so many levels, and it was so refreshing and recharging. And you know what else happened during that cohort? Like
Mm.
a lot of stuff basically started to gel for me. So I had no idea what growing up was, but since then, I understand that we are in different phases of our lives put in a position where we can actually, through that radical inventory taking, engagement, have an opportunity to grow up, and grow
Mm.
up on our own terms versus grow up maybe prior on the terms of society, stories, families, dynamics, relationships, and responsibilities. That at this point in our lives, the growing up is actually really up to us to either engage in or not engage in.
I'm glad I asked you the question.
I
And
didn't
what
prepare, by
you,
the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what you've just described is the internal process necessary to become a fully fledged adult.
Yeah.
And so let's break it down a little bit. We're not
Yeah.
talking about chronological aging.
Right.
We're not talking about even leadership development in the classic sense of it. What we're talking about is completing the process of human development. And what's important to understand is the opposite of this. We have too many examples of people who are in leadership positions or people who have power who are incomplete human beings, who have unprocessed demons from their childhood.
Hmm.
And because they have unprocessed demons and because they have power, they wreak havoc on other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Not only do we have an obligation to ourselves to do this kind of work, to grow up, but we have a moral obligation to do it on behalf of the people around us. Because those who get stuck in this
Mm-hmm.
process of becoming are more likely to harm other people.
Expand on that a little bit, Jerry, because I think sometimes um, the harm is not conscious necessarily, but it's still very, very real. Expand on that a little bit for those who, because I want to then just lead into that thing about radical self inquiry. Like, what does it make it so radical, and why is it so necessary?
Well, of course, it's unconscious in many cases,
Yeah.
because so much of, I mean, I would argue so much of our life, we keep using this phrase, growing up, and I use the descriptor bitter humans. But what does that really mean? Well, we can turn to the word consciousness, right? And mindfulness. These are words that are bandied about right now. And what those words mean is being aware of your own motivations, being aware of what you're doing. As I often say, why do I do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
And with the knowledge of why I do what I do I choose to do that again and again? Because the opposite is the normal operating stance, which is to operate in a way that is unconscious and on autopilot. This
Yeah.
is really what I did to you all in Santa Fe. Was I kind of took the snow globes of your head and I shook it,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even turned it upside down, so that you'd have a completely different perspective on
Mm-hmm.
who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked the question, what makes this so radical?
Right.
It's radical because we're so acculturated to not actually look at these questions.
What causes that, Jerry? Like, is it just going along and just the burdens of daily living? Like, because what we're describing here, what you're talking about, and I really get it. I mean, it's frightening sometimes when you're moving fast, when you bought into the sort of the ambition, the motivation, and the drive, and
Right.
if you've got blanks on your calendar, you should fill them. Otherwise, you're not productive. And that you don't leave yourself room or bandwidth to actually just sit still. I mean, it's probably the hardest thing for a lot of people to do that, especially if they're very driven. And yet it is so critical, because when you don't do that, you don't get a chance to basically look inwards.
You asked, why are we acculturated that way?
Yeah.
Why? It's out of safety.
Mm.
Okay. Many of us grow up in ways in which we don't ask the harder questions. We don't have role models in our lives of people who sort of pause and seek consciousness about their own motivations in the world. In fact, we more often than not are acculturated into systems where we just don't talk about things.
Mm.
For the folks listening, just pause for a moment. How often did you hear your parents ask questions like, why did I choose the career I chose? How often or how infrequently did questions like, why are we of this religion and not that religion?
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of our life is programmed at a very early age. And so then what happens is we start to grow up, we start to get a kind of affirmation because we're compliant.
Right.
And we really haven't developed the critical skills necessary to sort of choose who do we want to be? How do we want to respond in certain circumstances? I'm working with a client now. He's in his 60s. And one of his issues is that he can get very paranoid. He can get very, very insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone says something in a meeting, and all of a sudden it means he's about to be fired. And just a few weeks ago, I said something to him about making some conscious choices in your life. And how about choosing how you want the next year to be? And he pauses and says, well, that feels really adult to me. And I said, yeah, that's what we're talking about. What we're really talking about is lifting up the capacity to be conscious. You know this because you read my books, but one of my favorite quotes is from Carl Jung, and he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate.
Yeah, it's so much of it is that, like, if I'll say for myself, that was one of the hardest things to get to where I'm building that into my daily routine, is the stillness,
Mm,
the inward looking, almost as if it's as, I mean, it is as important, if not even more important, depending on what else is going on with me that day, of working out every day.
right.
It's as important a regimen of wellness, if you will, to do that. And that was hard. That was hard to do. That was hard to do in terms of just being able to turn off the phone, make it a priority that this is time for introspection. I know in your case, and you advocated where you journal every morning, sort of sets the tone for the day. A lot of this stuff sounds to a lot of people as being, because of, I think, the way that society is, when it gives importance to, it seems like it wouldn't be so important. It's not. It's trivial. It's sort of, oh, that's what other people do that have nothing else to do, but yet it is so foundational. And the more I do it, the more I realize the importance of it. Thank you for planting the seed of growing up at 60 again, and a lot of the stories that were not mine, that were part of my willing compliance
Mm,
for affirmation, for acknowledgement, for tying your sense of self-worth with other people's reactions, whether it starts off with parents or relationships and so forth, and you're not giving it to yourself, and it just perpetuates a cycle
mm.
that, if you, like you're saying, if you're not conscious of it, you don't even really have a chance to break it, let alone to understand, embrace it. And I know in your case, a lot of times in your book, it's not so much about abandoning that side of you as much as integrating that side of you in a way that actually now works for you.
Yeah. So you've pulled together a lot of themes. I want to unpack them a little bit and pull them apart. And the first thing I want to do is I want you to visualize that this is a multiple step process rather than one introspective self inquiry, realizations of patterns. So let's just break it apart so that people can understand it. And the first step begins with stillness. Blaise Pascal said, all of man's problems stem from his inability to sit alone in a room because of the thoughts that come in.
Mm-hmm.
I have been practicing meditation for almost 30 years. Um, people misunderstand meditation as an attempt to banish thoughts from our mind. It's not. It's a multi-step process. We sit still, and then we start to pay attention to what comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to ask questions of ourselves when things arise. So imagine I am sitting still in meditation, and I'm quiet, and all of a sudden, as can happen to me all the time, I start to feel anxious.
Mm-hmm.
What am I anxious about? And then I start to watch my mind. And my mind starts to supply all sorts of reasons to be anxious, like you're not being productive enough. People are going to figure out that you don't really add value.
Right.
You never work hard enough.
Right.
Now I'm starting to bring the past. The radical self-inquiry starts to kick in when we say, why do I go there in that silence? Let me take you back to the workshop that we did. Remember the time, how often, you're right, I will.
Mm-hmm.
You remember how often I would allow for silence?
Yeah.
Think of that silence as an aspect of that stillness. Is to fill the silence with noise. I mean, when I was a kid, my father used to walk around holding a transistor radio tuned to the local news station. You give us 22 minutes, we give you the world.
Mm-hmm.
And every 22 minutes, they would say that. Because he could not be comfortable with the silence. And now, as an adult, I can look back and I say, he was probably uncomfortable with the thoughts that arose in the silence. So fill the silence. Okay. So that's the stillness piece. How does this relate to growing up? How does this relate to the Raad life, which is the life that one wishes one to have? Well, you cannot begin to define your life unless you've actually listened to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part, that's where all of those negative thoughts start to kick in that says, what are you doing wasting your time listening to your heart? What a waste of time.
Well, Jerry, the underlying thing when we're talking about this seems to me like we are all driven, whether it's again through that affirmation from being conformists with whether society demands of us or asks of us, or our jobs ask of us, or our parents, or just whatever it is, that there's this hunger to belong.
Mm.
To belong to something other than yourself. And it sounds to me like we're talking about here too, is that hunger to belong isn't something you're going to satiate necessarily, or you're going to somehow eradicate the need for, because we are human beings. We have the emotions, and like you say, we leading with heart as well as just mind, which we tend to do more of the mind than the heart maybe. But that sense of belonging almost starts, if you get to that point of growing up, it seems to me like that belonging needs to be anchored in oneself first, right? I mean, that's where it is the most steadfast and more grounded. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, and you're laying out the thesis that I wrote about in Reunion,
Mm-hmm.
in speaking about the longing to belong. I'm going to hop up and I want to read something.
Please. Yeah, Jerry's referencing his second book, Reunion, which speaks exactly about that epidemic of disconnection, and it's something that we're living in a different way, I think, with the social media aspect of things, the being in contact but not really being connected. But that foundational human need to belong is in all of us.
Yeah. So this is the epigraph to the book, and to me, this summarizes so much of what we're talking about. And this is a quote from Frederick Buechner. Buechner was a theologian, Christian theologian, and brilliant writer. And he wrote in The Longing for Home, there lies the longing to know and be known. There lies the longing to know and be known by another fully and humanly. And that beneath that, there lies a longing closer to the heart of the matter still, which is the longing to be at long last where you fully belong. In Reboot, my first book,
Yeah.
I spoke about the drive for love, safety, and belonging. And of those three, we are motivated from childhood to love and be loved. We need to feel emotionally, physically, existentially, spiritually safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then therefore we can feel that we belong. In Reunion, I went deeper on the question of what does it mean to belong? And so if you put these concepts together, what you see is in order to belong to the other, I must know and be known myself so that I can then feel safe and loved
Mm-hmm.
as the ground upon which all belonging is built.
Yeah. What
So
gets in the what gets in the way of that, Jerry? I mean, what especially for like, I mean, I would guess maybe men more than women. I don't know. I mean, I'm just referencing it from my perspective. But what gets in the way of that belonging, especially
the
like at midlife?
the programming that we take in as children that is designed to keep us safe. I'll give you a perfect example of that.
Please.
Silence. Okay. My self-worth and therefore my safety is determined by how productive I am,
Mm-hmm.
how much I get done, how many mountains have I summited,
Mm-hmm.
how many dollars do I have in the bank, how many external accolades do I get. So my safety is built on me being in motion all the time. The consequence of that is my ability to answer questions like to whom and to what I belong can only arise in the stillness, can only arise in the quiet. If I'm so busy proving my worth, ironically, I will never feel at peace. And the whole point of trying to prove my worth was to feel at peace in the first place.
Right.
That's how you were socialized. That's how I was socialized. And you're right, there is a gender thing. It's not exclusively one gender or the other.
Right.
But it is how we were socialized. It's a kind of what have you done for me lately phenomena that just haunts us.
Right. And it's external versus internal viewing, right? It's
external validation versus internal validation. It's being able to say, to look, as I said in Reboot at one point, subchapter titled, I am enough just as I am. I am enough. Yeah. I mean, it's sad, but that's a radical concept.
So it's, and we'll touch on that word. It keeps coming up. I grin every time it comes up, even when we're talking about radical self-inventory and radical self-examination, because it's almost a reminder for me because of my name that I cannot abandon this ongoing growing, and which is never ending, right? But it's like I've gotten to the point now where because my name is involved in that word, I basically find joy in engagement with the process, if that makes any sense. It's kind of fun.
It does. And I'm going to call forth something else, I think, for you in particular, because of that word radical. There may be a repeated call for Raad to be radical, which means non-compliant.
Yeah.
Which means rebellious.
Yeah.
Which means doing the unexpected, which means being unpredictable, which means being himself.
You've spent some time with me, Jerry, and we know each other a little bit. But yeah, I think, what's funny about that is I think that's the part that I have held back. That's the part that, you could call it almost the shadow, if we want to refer to Jung, right? That I am basically finding myself not only welcoming, but not necessarily in the driver's seat, right? But welcoming as part of the integrated wholeness. And
well, let's go there.
Yeah.
At what point did you experience that part of you being rejected by the world?
Very early on, I think, and it was not so much rejected as just basically misunderstood. I mean, and I can go back and reference different things. Like as a child, I think it just you're kind of like you're not in the lane that is known. You're kind of whether they refer to you as being an oddity or
Hmm.
like a black sheep in the family in a joyous way. You're not out there basically wrecking cars and doing drugs, but you're sort of off on a tangent. Right.
Hmm.
So that's always been sort of a situation like this. I actually have one cousin of mine, and the two of us would pride ourselves on being, well, I guess we're the black sheep of the family. Right.
Hmm.
And sense of
The
belonging.
tall poppy problem.
Yeah,
See, the
exactly.
tall poppy gets cut down.
It gets cut down exactly because it's not in line with the rest of the field, right?
Right.
So that I think that was part of it. I think when I first started working too, I remember clearly on a number of occasions where I remember one particular situation where I basically spent 3 months on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean overseeing a project which I had never even touched before. I was literally paratrooper airdrop triage on this project that needed to basically get done in 3 months. And it was one of those cases where you think you can do something, and then you find out by doing that you can actually do what you thought you could
Mm.
do.
Mm.
And then I go back to headquarters, and in the same breath that I'm being told that the quality of my, in this case, production documentation for design is maybe lacking a little, I asked, well, are you letting me go? And they said, well, no, but we don't know what to do with you.
Mm.
And I don't know what to do with you, I think speaks to that, what you are asking.
Mm.
I've heard that many a times. And I've always, I think, looked for other people to give me the answer to what it is to do with me,
Mm.
when actually the answer lies within me. And I actually, I mean, I'm not a what's the word, anarchist, but I think rebellious is something that I actually enjoy, and from a creative perspective, from pushing the envelope, from doing stuff. So yeah, I think that's something I lost touch with, and then basically being allowed to explore that and do it in an environment of belonging, like at Santa Fe, and then with the tongue-in-cheek naming of the cohort that came out of that.
Mm.
Um, I feel like I have a responsibility to myself to live up to that level of what I should be contributing and being involved in, while still basically being true to myself. Like it's connecting with that North Star, even though that North Star may be rebellious compared to the rest of the field of poppies.
So we got to this by talking about the parts of ourselves, and in particular, the parts of you that were not acceptable.
Hmm. You asked good
And
questions, Jerry. I said that at the beginning.
and we ended up with a lot of words about where you are now.
Yeah.
But the reason we were talking about the parts of ourselves was the wish to reintegrate that.
Hmm.
So I want to take you back to that.
Okay. Please.
So when they said to you in the Indian Ocean, we don't know what to do with you, don't tell me what you think, tell
Hmm.
me what you felt.
I felt that was their problem.
So no negative feelings.
And if anything, I probably said, "Oh, okay, fine. I guess I'll do more scuba diving while you figure it out."
Okay.
Like, there was no negative feelings per se, and at the same time, I think I know where you're going with this is, or what you're asking is, there was a certain instability. I felt a little shaken, right? Because I was still looking for that outside validation to give me my worth. And I think that has been a driving force for a long time in me. Not always, because
Well,
there were times with that wasn't even like on the radar. I just still did it. I mean, my mother, God rest her soul, used to kind of almost in a warning manner tell people, like if I brought a girl home or something, or a friend home or something that she hadn't seen, and I would do something, and they would kind of like look at me, and my mom would say, "Well, Rod's going to do what Rod wants to do, and Rod wants to do it," as if it was a warning.
so was that a criticism?
Oh, of course, yeah. From her perspective,
Oh, slow down, of course. I mean,
I think,
I could say with pleasure, right? With a
right.
compliment. Well, Rod gets to do what Rod wants to do. What
I, I,
in what way in your mother's view was
yeah.
that a criticism?
there was a frustration, I think, and at least
on
that's
her
how
part.
what she conveyed, and on her part, there was a frustration,
What did
like,
she want? She wanted you to do what she tells you to do.
or what was sort of acceptable, like that I think, and not where she was like top down kind of command and control, but there was a sense of like, I think, and then think that's common if somebody's so called as free spirit or marches to their own drum, so to speak, as a child especially, that you're trying to be conforming, they're trying to conform you into something. I think she meant it from a place of frustration. I don't think she meant it from a place of meanness, and I took it as an indicator that I was um, not hitting the marks. I was lesser than, right, and
So notice what's going on here.
yeah,
Mom was worried about how you were going to be perceived,
correct,
partially because she loved you.
yeah, it's a
And
safety.
right? She
Yep,
wanted you to be safe. Safe
yep,
from what? In this case, criticism, shame,
from outside.
humiliation from outside.
Hmm.
And so she would say this thing that could feel harsh,
Right,
which then did the opposite of what she was intending. She was intending for you to feel safe.
right.
And so that part of you, that free spirited part of you, that free radical part of you, kind of got shut down. Now, you being you didn't stay shut down forever, but there's a tension that exists between those two parts of you.
Right.
And the reason I'm focused on that is what I have come to understand is that the best way to deal with those parts of ourselves, I use this term in reunion, the parts of ourselves that we have dismembered,
Hmm.
is to reunite them and bring them back into ourselves, to actually embrace that part of us, to lift it up, which means touching into the painful feelings that caused us to dismember it in the first place.
Which you have to do the work. I mean, that's
That's the growing up.
that's the growing up part. Yeah,
That's the fullness.
and it's not fixing, right? It's not being fixed or fixing yourself, but it's actually being more whole and integrated.
Yeah, if you want an image, think of it as it's expanding your capacity to withstand all of you.
Hmm.
As Whitman said, do I contradict myself? I do. I am large. I contain multitudes. Imagine being able to contain the multitudes, the meanness as well as the generosity,
Hmm.
the fearful part of you as well as the brave part of you. Imagine being friends with all of that and treating all of that with love. That's what we mean. That's what I mean when I say an adult.
What do you find as being, like, if you don't mind, can you share a moment in your life where you have felt? I know that you're potentially even encountering it. You shared it. If I may share this, you're encountering this now, where like a shift is happening. Like to just point out that this is not work that gets basically done and done with, right? This is ongoing.
It's always ongoing.
Right.
I mean, you know, I, when I was younger, my lack of settledness with these aspects of my personality contributed mightily to my own depression, to suicidal feelings, to acting on those impulses, to the point where depression was probably the predominant emotional state. Um, Probably about 25 years ago, I had this insight, which was that the opposite of sadness was not happiness, but wholeness. That what really contributed to my sense of sadness was that some parts of me were not acceptable. Some parts of
Mm.
my own experience were not acceptable. I had internalized a lot of the belief systems about what it meant to be safe.
Mm.
Um, now I am much more capable of returning to a sense of wholeness, even as I bear witness to new parts of me unfolding. You're referring to a conversation we had in a group a few weeks ago or last week, in which I talked about that which is emerging for me, which is, I have been a coach now for 27 years. I've written 2 best-selling books. I have an extraordinarily wonderful life. And something new is emerging.
Mm-hmm.
I very much feel like the elder in me is coming forth. And I'm embracing that. And I'm really curious about it because I have no idea where it's going to take me.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because it's sometimes it's misunderstood that, we look at somebody who is in this coaching situation or mentoring people, and you go, well, they got all the answers, and they do have the answers that they have, but they're constantly also, I think I was reading one book, and it's a gentleman was talking, he's a therapist, and he was talking about how people just think that, when you leave the therapy session or you leave a mentoring session, that you are, the client basically walks away with like, oh, all of this knowledge or whatever you've written down, and you have not left an imprint on an impact on the coach or the therapist. And yet that's not the case. That exchange between people actually leads to exploration and curiosity on all parties involved. I know with you and I, when we have talked, I felt like we both walked away with something that came out of that exchange.
Yeah.
That was another element, another curiosity, another rewarding experience.
Well, what I would say, my response would be twofold. The first is what is much more interesting to me than giving clients answers or even giving myself answers is giving clients questions.
Yeah.
Giving myself questions. If I can leave a client with an open, honest question that is provocative enough to let them continue to do their work, then I've left them with tools necessary to no longer needing me, which is the ultimate act of coaching.
It's almost like teaching someone how to fish, right?
It is exactly like teaching them how to fish.
Right.
The other thing that you hit upon is the magic of presence, the magic of 2 human beings, sometimes walking, sometimes sitting side by side, and looking at life together as companions, as kinfolk, and sharing what they see. And in that space, we created it when we did the workshop together.
Yeah.
We create this magical space. Remember how obsessed I was about paying attention to the center of the room.
Yeah.
The space that existed between you and the fellow participants, or myself and you. There's something that when 2 or more are gathered in his name, there is love.
Mm-hmm.
To speak of what Christ once taught.
Yeah.
When 2 or more are gathered, magic happens. Especially if the 2 or more are gathering with questions.
Yep. And that openness and that courage, right?
And the willingness to sit in silence, the willingness to not have answers, the willingness to see what emerges in the uncertainty. It's literally everything that we've been socialized against doing in traditional business school or business leadership development, right? You're supposed to come in, you're supposed to get shit done, you're supposed to be productive, and yet even the great leadership teachers say, Peter Drucker used to say that a leader's job is to ask the right questions.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely Peter, which I had the privilege of actually attending a few of his classes when I was in Claremont Graduate School.
There you go.
Yeah. It's if people have not understood at this point in the interview why I look at Jerry as very papal in his in his delivery, you may have gotten a little sense of it. It's not necessarily religious, but it's definitely spiritual, and it's definitely thank you. Thank you, Al Papa. And again, a reminder that this is a constant work in progress, and it's embracing it with joy is really kind of the wonderful thing, and the gift that you definitely have helped me get, Jerry, is that to accept the fact that this is an ongoing journey, and it's an ongoing journey that's actually embraceable, and you can, we talked about happiness. It's not about happiness, but it's the joy, the curiosity.
Hmm.
Like I think that's part of it. We talked about how a lot of us went to the workshop, or and didn't really have a clue what it was really about, and yet at the same time we were having this conversation, we were talking about how some of us are feeling a little shaken by uncertainty of whether the way the world is right now, or
Right.
the instability of certain things, market, whatever you want to call it. And I said, and it hit me, and we talked about this, how yes, but even in those circumstances, here we are, those people that are basically worried about uncertainty, not needing to kind of like cleave onto the outcome, knowing what the outcome would be. And yet we acted contrary to those exact insecurities, and got on a plane and went to Santa Fe to participate in a workshop where we had no certainty of outcome. We had no idea of the people that we're going to encounter. We had no idea whether it was a safe environment or not. In some cases, some of the people had gone to workshops before. A lot of us had not. And it wasn't an age situation either. We had a range of people from 30 to 70 plus, right? So again, it's a reminder that what we may have taken on and adapted to that is not ours, we are actually allowed to do the work and do the stillness and the presence, to let it go, to
Mm.
put it aside, to select what we carry with us and what we don't going forward.
Mm.
So thank you for that gift, my friend. It's very much it's a living gift that I engage with on a daily basis now.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'll just call the act of you all trusting Modern Elder Academy, trusting me, trusting Chip. It was a radically brave act, and
There's that word again.
yeah, and it's radical in the sense that it's just not what we tend to do. It tends
Yeah.
to be different.
Well, I want to be cognizant of your time too, Jerry, and I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. I mean, you and I I've told you before, I can absorb as much time as you are available at any place and location. But I want to thank you again for being on the show. I want to thank you for being so supportive
Mm.
with this journey of mine that I'm basically embarking on here, with the elevating sort of the Raad Life thing into more of, let's call it like it is, a radical rebellious movement of sorts, maybe centered on Gen X, but it's actually not even that. It's anybody that wants to embrace this kind of Raad Life, if I may quote the name itself. So, and thank you for your generosity. You had said to me after I finished the book and I shared with you the impact, you said to me, you have been rebooted. and and I feel like I have been rebooted, and I feel like because I have been rebooted, I cannot allow myself to go into a lull.
Mm.
That the balance of that presence and stillness and engagement and curiosity. Yeah, I've been rebooted. I've been rebooted, in a way that actually brings me back to myself,
Mm.
to my own truth, that I basically, not through consciousness, but over the course of life, maybe abandoned in pieces. And it's really enjoyable to reconnect with it. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm very proud to know that the work that I've done has resonated so deeply with you. And yeah, I'm excited to see what unfolds with the Raad Life and what you've got, coming forth. It's like I feel like I'm at the movie theater eating popcorn, just enjoying seeing what's
Re-
unfolding.
really soon, my friend, really soon. And enjoy the rest of your sabbatical. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And
Thank,
as we do in the in the circle, I really appreciate you, and I feel complete.
thank you, Rod. I'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
thank you, Jerry. I'll talk to you soon. Until next time, everybody. I'm Rod Gantis, and this is the Raad Life. Stay curious, stay open, and remember, it's never too late to come home to yourself.